everybody. It's Pastor Tom, the 24 Today podcast, and I really appreciate you being here with me today. You know that I love people. I love interviewing people. I love to learn, and this is what this is all about. Today, it's my special guest to have Anita Wilson with me, who has written a book. She also has a website called Alias in Town. In fact, some people know her more as Alias in Town from her website, but also have read her book. And the reason why I wanted to talk to Anita today is because she really understands the topic of depression. And I know, as a person, my own self, that I have struggled with depression in my life. And I know how difficult and painful that can be. And I have a feeling that either you have as well listening, or you know someone that this could be a big help too. So, Anita, let me just say welcome to the podcast and thank you for joining us today.
Oh, thank you. I'm privileged to be here. Thank you, Tom. I appreciate it.
Sure. Tell me a little bit about Alias in Town, how you came up with that idea.
Alias in Town is an anagram of my name. If you just rearrange the letters, you get Alias in Town.
Okay, your name is Anita Wilson, so okay.
Wilson, but Alias in Town. And I chose that name as a pen name on purpose because there are alias people living in every town who suffer from chronic illness, depression, and addictions.
Wow.
And they stay alias. They don't want to talk about it. We still, in 2018, have a stigma attached.
We do.
Mental illness, and it's very difficult. And I find that it's especially difficult for Christians because Christians feel like it reflects on their journey of faith. And if they are in depressed state, then there's a spotlight that shines on you that says you're failing as a Christian because you should be joyful or filled with joy.
What a shame. What a shame that is. I mean, how in the world the Christian faith ever got into that understanding? Because you look at Job. I've been reading Job a lot lately. You talk about a guy that was depressed. You look at the life of David. There, you read the Psalms. Even Paul, if you look closely at some of the ways that he words certain things, that guy was very familiar with anxiety and familiar with stress. Right. And so, how in the
Elijah,
world?
After he did the prophet battle.
Yeah.
Had the battle with the prophets, he went and sat underneath.
Absolutely, he did. Yeah.
So
how in the world we do this? It's so mean that we do this to ourselves and to other Christians or people in general, that somehow we've failed, or we're not a complete person, or it's just not true. It's just the fact that some people deal with depression. Everyone deals with depression, but some people deal with it in greater extent than others.
Exactly. So depression can be cyclical in people's lives. And then there are also people who are like me, who have a brain chemistry imbalance. And it's an actual, if you think about it, it's a physical illness. It's my brain that it needs help. And so it's a physical problem that manifests itself emotionally and spiritually. And I'm under, with the proper medication,
there is literally a chemical imbalance that happens in the body for people that suffer with this. You can genetically it goes come back in your past, and it's in my family, for instance, and so that definitely is something that we shouldn't blame ourselves or think that God's mad at us or we're a failure. And I think that term mental illness doesn't do us any favors, because it just is an illness. It's just a struggle that we're having. I don't even know how to, once you say mental illness, now how do you regroup and rephrase that? Because that's not a good phrase.
It isn't a good phrase, and you know what? I'm not sure how to answer that question.
Yeah, you're right.
We need new language around it, and I think that would help the stigma if we could come up with some new language to put around it. It is a state of being. Yeah. That you are in, that there is help for.
Yep.
And that's what makes me passionate about this issue, is that there is help. You don't have to stay in that state.
Right.
There's help for you.
Yeah. And I'm so grateful for people like you that have written a book, a very open and honest book. I've read reviews about your book, and people just say they're just amazed at how honest you are. it just kind of opening your life up and your experiences. And that's what we need, is to hear someone that's honest and saying, look, this is what I've dealt with, and this is what I deal with, and this is how I'm working through it.
Yes, yes. The book starts out right in 2012. In 2012, my depression became very bad. I have a chronic illness that is vestibular migraines.
Oh, okay.
Time it was called Meniere's disease, but then my diagnosis has changed over time. But that's beside the point. I ended up losing my career. I ended up not being able to volunteer like I did in my church like I was used to. So my identity had been stripped away. Yep. I was very sick. And I found an online support group, and someone in the online support group suggested to me that for vertigo, I should take a shot of whiskey because it suppresses the nervous system.
Okay.
So I did that, and it worked. But alcohol being what alcohol is, 1 shot became 2 shots.
Wow.
And then 3 shots, and then 4 shots. And alcohol is also a depressant. So if you add all of that in to someone who's already depressed, I became to the point where I was actually having what was called a dissociative depressive disorder.
Wow.
So I was disassociating from reality because I was abusing alcohol so badly. Okay. And my book starts out with the day that I woke up from my suicide attempt, where I had taken an entire bottle of Klonopin. I just had the prescription refilled. I took that entire bottle of Klonopin with about a half a liter of 100 proof alcohol, and taped my 12-page suicide note to my bedroom door with a Band-Aid because I couldn't find any tape. And when I woke up the next morning, I was not happy. I was angry that I was still alive, but my family and my friends were sitting in my living room.
Oh my goodness.
And I walked out of my bedroom, and I felt like I walked into this wall of love.
Wow.
And I don't even remember what was said because my mind was so fogged up. I don't remember the words that were said, but I remember the love in the room. And that love in that room made me decide that, you know what, I need to love myself, and I need to especially love them back and get help.
Wow. How awesome that is that you woke up to love, because so often the reaction that people have is anger, and they want to scold, and they want to, how could you ever let yourself, and all of these things that if you would have, if your eyes would have opened up to that, you're already upset that you're alive at this point. Right. And then if you add on to that, mean faces and just people that are criticizing you, who knows if we'd be having this conversation today. Exactly.
I went into treatment after that. I went into a psychiatric hospital I was an inpatient in the psychiatric hospital for 2 weeks. And then we did an outpatient system where I would get up in the morning, go to the hospital, stay there all day, and come home and sleep in my own bed at night. And I did that for 6 weeks. So altogether, 8 weeks worth of treatment. And I'm telling you what, it changed my life. And I have to give God the glory for this, because my mind was very, very befuddled. I could not hold on to a conscious thought. But when I was in that psychiatric hospital and the inpatient, within the first few days there, scriptures just started flooding my mind. Scripture after scripture after scripture, and song, and the lyrics to old hymns.
Oh yeah, sure.
God was right there with me, and He loved me. And He was drawing me to Him, even though my mind couldn't hold on to a clear thought. I could clearly remember scripture. So I would go into the bathroom in the hospital, because I had a roommate and I didn't want to bother her at night. So I would go into the bathroom, and I would sit on the floor of the bathroom in front of the toilet with my journal, and I would just write out these scriptures that came to my mind. And the power of God and the power of scripture, when you are in a situation like that, it's beyond. To me, it was a miracle. It was a miraculous thing.
So were you raised in church?
I was, yes. My dad is a pastor and has been for over 40 years.
Okay.
And I have always been in church. I came to know Christ at 5 years old, just a little one, and very strong Christian up until about 2012, when I started to lax on my spiritual disciplines. Okay. I started to not pray as much. I started to avoid the Bible because I was angry at God for this, that He hadn't healed me from this illness yet.
From the headaches.
Yes.
Which is a terrible thing to have. Yeah.
Yeah, and the vertigo that went along with it. Yeah, sure. Those symptoms were bad, and I was falling a lot. I've had within that year, I had over 20 CT scans from falls where my head had to be scanned because I would fall and knock myself out, and so there was a lot of turmoil and things going on, and I was angry at God, so I started to ignore Him. And because I let those spiritual disciplines in my life lax, I ended up falling to a very bad place. And the depression ended up taking a hold of me in a way that I had no longer had any control over it. And that's what I worry about for people who remain alias, is that you can get to a place where the depression becomes all you see. You don't see any future. You don't see any hope at the end of the tunnel, no lights at the end of the tunnel. But there is hope.
Sure.
And there is help. And Jesus is definitely part of that.
Now, what was your career? What were you doing when all these headaches?
My title was Senior Database Marketing Analyst. So I was a computer geek that examined data warehouses and analyzed data. And I had clawed my way up in that career, and I loved it. I absolutely adored what I did for a living. And so losing that career was a big part of the stripping away of my identity, and realizing, I talk in my book about the importance of not basing your identity on what you do for a living, that your identity needs to be based on whose you are and not who you are. You are God's child, and that, if your identity is based on that, it never changes. It remains constant.
Sure. If you're just joining us, I'm Pastor Tom, and this is the 24 Today podcast, and you can find out more about me at 24today.org. And also, I have another website just called tomwhitesel.com, and you can find out just about me, some of my just teachings from Scripture, interviews like we're doing now, lots of different things. But my special guest is Anita Wilson, who has a website of her own, and it is called Alias in Town, aliasintown.com. Good website that you can go to and find out more about her and on this subject of depression. You can also find her book, which is entitled Well, W-E-L-L, Well, a Memoir. And it has to do with her life and her personal struggles through chronic pain and through depression and just what we are talking about right now. And you can get her book on Amazon.com. It's an ebook, and it's also on in paperback. And let's continue to talk more, Anita. So you were struggling. You had a career that you loved, and then you're trying to deal with the headaches and the dizziness that you're feeling and the falling down. All of that. You're very, very discouraged. It ends up affecting and taking your career. You're angry at God. Yes. And then somebody suggests that maybe a little alcohol would work. And so the alcohol initially did work, and then it became more and more and more. Now, did you actually become what you would say addicted to alcohol?
I did not become physically addictive, but I was absolutely an abuser of alcohol. I had gotten to the point where I was drinking almost a full liter of 100 proof alcohol a day. My weight ballooned up to over 300 pounds because of the calorie content that is in alcohol. Okay. And yes, I abused it, and I also would take pain pills
Okay.
from other people. If other people had pain pills, and
Sure.
I would get them, and I would take them and take them with the alcohol, and I would use it to escape. The initial excuse was, this is medicine for my vertigo. But
Okay.
then it became, this is the escape. I can completely escape everything by doing this. And escaping is never an answer.
Sure. No, it isn't.
It's never an answer.
Right. And so you had a moment in which you felt you had had enough, and
Yeah,
you felt the best answer was ending it all, and so you tried
I
to
did.
end it all.
I did. I tried. I took that whole bottle of basically sleeping pills with alcohol, and my state of mind was such that I didn't feel like I had a future. I felt like I was just being a burden to others because of my illness.
Mm.
I felt like I didn't have a point to exist. I had no purpose to exist, and I felt like my life was just going nowhere. And all of those things are just lies,
Yes.
things that I believed that weren't true,
Mm-hmm.
but they were a truth to me in that moment because I had given up my power
Mm.
to this depression. I had given over myself to it, and it consumed me.
So were there medical people that revived you, or how did you end up coming out of that alcohol?
I went into the psychiatric hospital for 2 weeks, and then I was in a outpatient psychiatric place for 6 weeks, so a total of 8 weeks of pretty intense therapy. They have a unit called the dual diagnosis unit, and that means that it's substance abuse combined with depression, and so they target their therapy to those two things. And it was through that and through God helping me with flooding my mind with scripture, and those scriptures kept coming back over and over again to remind me of that. And one of the things that I think is cool is that I have a story to tell, and I'm telling my story, but there are millions of people out there who God works with and delivers all the time. Mm-hmm. So in a way, my story is not unique at all. Mm-hmm. God is constantly working in the lives of people. But there are alias people who are hiding in their own world and not reaching out for help when it is right there.
Sure. Let's talk a little bit more about that, because I like that description or that phrase of alias, because the truth is that so many people are suffering from something. I mean, everybody is suffering from something, and many people are suffering from depression. What is the stat? How common is that?
There are it's 1 in 5. So 20% of the people that you sit in church with every Sunday, or 1 in 5 people that happen to be in your classroom, or 1 in 5 coworkers are dealing with some form of depression, whether that is a bipolar depression or minor depression or major depressive disorder. There's some form of depression that they're dealing with, and it is vast. And like I said, there is hope and there is help.
Sure. And again, that does not mean that a person that's suffering from depression, it doesn't mean that God doesn't love them, or that they're a failure, or that God's punishing them, or it's because of something that they're weak or whatever. You know, the person standing, delivering the message might be that person, which has definitely been me at times. So we're all working through this. But the thing is, you work through it. Because I know that for you, I'm assuming that it wasn't just an episode and it's all gone and you never suffer with this again. It's a battle in different degrees.
Yes, absolutely a battle. I was in therapy for 8 weeks, but after that, it took months. It took months for my mind to clear from the substance abuse. And for me to, like I had stated earlier, I had gotten to the point where the depression was disassociating me from reality. So it took months of therapy and hard work in order to come to a place where I can now say that I am well.
Wow.
And there are things and coping strategies I talk about in the book that are really key. And they are not necessarily a blanket for everyone. Everyone has their own certain ways that they deal with stress in their life.
Mm-hmm.
But there are some things that are in common.
Sure.
And those things they seem kind of obvious when you think about it, but one is gratitude. Another is being kind to others. Another is making sure you have other people in your life. You don't need to have a large network of people, but one or two people that you can be yourself with and not wear a mask
right.
front of. Those are, I would say those are three really important things that I think can really help you get on the right track to coping. And then you need to find your own individual ways to cope with stress. For me, it's art. It's probably my primary way of dealing with stress. I create art. I love to do Bible journaling. I do that, and I also paint. And the book has a lot of my artwork in it.
Good. Again, I am Pastor Tom, and 24today.org is one of my sites. TomWhitesel.com is another. Talking with Anita Wilson, who has written a book that you would enjoy reading. It's called Well, a memoir, and you can find that on Amazon or by visiting her site, which is aliasintown.com. That's aliasintown.com. You can head over there and just find out more about her. She is also a speaker. Would love to share her story with groups, with churches, whoever might want to contact her as well. I know Anita would appreciate that opportunity, and you would benefit from that also. Anita, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead. I was waiting for you to ask me a question.
Sure. So I'm interested to know who was that person, or were there just a few people that stayed by your side that whole time when you were in the hospital? Because, so if depression is such a stigma, which it is, unfortunately, I'm hoping that this podcast will help it not be so much. But being that is a stigma, then a clinic or wherever it is that you might be for help also is a stigma, and all the different things that we say, all the labels we have for that. But who was it that wasn't worried about any of that and that stayed by your side?
I was so very, very blessed. My family stayed by my side, and I had some specific friends. I will mention one friend by name. Her name is Julie.
Okay.
She drove me to the outpatient facility every day during that 6-week time frame. She championed me. She reminded me about the things that were special about me, and that how God created me to be a unique and loving individual.
Wow.
My husband is another person I would like to mention. He has always supported me. He wasn't sure what to do, but he never left my side, and he stayed by, and he supported me, and he came alongside me, and didn't judge me, didn't put me down, didn't point his finger at me and said, "What did you do this for?"
Wow.
And then my son David, he is the one who arranged for all of the medical care and all of the hospital care that I needed. He had that all arranged for me by the time I got up from trying to kill myself the next morning. He had that done. He had worked through the night to have that all arranged for me, so that when they did the intervention for me that morning, I had a place to go. There was a plan in place. And so I am very blessed. And that's why I said it's important that you have 2 or 3 people in your life that you can be real with.
Yes. Now, if this wasn't a good experience, you don't have to go into this, but I'm hoping that the church that you went back to was welcoming and loving and accepted you.
It really was.
Good.
I had such a unique church experience. And in fact, at that time, my church was in flux. We had a church that was together for about 20 years.
Okay.
And it was dissolving because the senior pastor had resigned.
Okay.
And we were getting ready to we were merging with another church.
Uh-huh.
And so there was a pastor that I didn't know very well, but yet he was also not condemning, and he offered me support and prayer. And the people that were within my community of the church that I had attended for almost 20 years, they didn't leave my side. Now, there are some people, though, I will say this, there are some people who were angry.
Yes.
Who were angry, who were disappointed. Mm-hmm. I was a leader in the church, and it's not right that we do this as human beings, but we tend to put leaders up on pedestals.
Yes, right.
And I had a big fall, and so there are people that are still disappointed with me. There are people that are still angry with me, and I have to let that go and let God. I've done what I need to do. I've apologized for anything that I have done to wrong them.
Sure.
But it's up to God now to deal with that relationship and them to deal with their own heart.
Sure.
But yeah, you are going to run into people who are supportive and people who are not so much.
So Anita, I'm going back in your story a little bit. Now you in the hospital room or in the area where you were getting recovery, you mentioned a time where you were literally in the bathroom and you are reviewing scriptures. They're coming to your mind.
Yes.
Songs are coming to your mind. Jesus is coming to your mind. What did you do next? I mean, what was that moment like when you said, what I've tried to do isn't working. I need you, Jesus. What happened then?
It was really what didn't happen at that moment while I was in the hospital. I just absorbed all of these were coming from God. But later on, as my mind healed and as my body healed from what I had put it through, there came a moment in time where God just made it clear to me that I needed to surrender.
Yes.
And that meant not just surrender to Him and His will, but to surrender to the fact that I might have this illness for a very long time.
Okay.
It might be that He may not choose to heal me from this illness, and I need to surrender to it. I need to stop fighting against all these things, and I need to surrender. And it was at that moment I just prayed and realized that is the only way to live life. You've got to live within God's will for your life and accept it and surrender to it.
You do.
And that is a result of me going through my journals and pulling out 10 years worth of journal entries and just reviewing it to try to figure out how I ended up in this mess. And that was the conclusion that I came to, was surrender. Surrender.
So you had been forced to surrender, I guess, in the type of work that you were doing or the way you did. I have a feeling that somehow God's using those gifts still, but you know, we have our own plans and the way we need to do things, and I had to do this myself. I mean, I had to for a period of time while I was recovering from burnout. I mean, I couldn't do the daily pastoring job that I always had done. I'm a singer. I wasn't able to sing just because I just couldn't sing, you know, when I was broken like that and burnout. And so anyway, man, I had surrender was all part of what I had to really go through. I have sung the song "I Surrender All" for so many years, but I never knew it until I was forced to surrender. So you are talking about now, you were really, I mean, you were down and out, and you really forced to surrender.
Yes.
And you must have had a time or a prayer where you just said, Jesus, this is Anita, and I am sorry for my decisions, and I don't even know where to go from here except I just surrendered all to you.
Yeah, that was exactly that prayer. Almost is word for word what I said.
Wow.
It was exactly that, and it was a moment in time. I just remember it. It was when I was reviewing all of those old journal entries, and it was just God again. He's so faithful, and He just again put in my mind, you need to surrender all of this to me. And I had realized, because I've been dealing with depression for years, and I had realized by looking through my journal entries that there were times where I was taking my life back into my own hands instead of allowing God to work through situations. I was trying to solve them for myself, and that I noticed that as a pattern. And so, God just said, you need to surrender, and that prayer was exactly it. It was, I am so sorry, God, and I give it all to you. I have nothing in me that can fight this battle. This is beyond me, and I need to surrender to whatever your will is for me, whatever it is.
Anita, can you see, I mean, I know I can answer this before I even ask the question, but I'm going to say, can you see the hand of God in all of this in your life, even through an attempted depression? Not that that's what God wanted you to do, but somehow this miraculous hand of God that at one point you said, where are you, God? Because I have these headaches and I've lost my job. Where are you, God? Now, can you see God was there?
Yes, and the reason I named my book Well, I still have this chronic illness. I still 2 to 3 days a week. I still suffer with vertigo, and the vertigo causes vomiting, and I have the severe headaches. I have auras. I fall a lot because my balance system is very screwed up. So I'm always covered in bruises and marks and things from falling. My physical condition has not changed. But the words of that song, It Is Well With My Soul, there's a phrase in there that says, even so, it is well. And so the reason I chose Well as the title for my book is because my physical state does not define whether or not I am well. My physical state is going to continue to devolve as I age. But what is inside of me, in my soul, the love of God, nothing can separate me from that. Not height, not depth, nothing. And He has me in His hands, and I am secure in there. And so I don't even know if I answered your question. I think I forgot what it was.
No, you did. Even so, that answers it. Even so. With all that's going on, even so, somehow, even though it doesn't make sense, somehow, even though I don't feel good yet, somehow, even so, it's well, because you are there, and it's day by day. Even so is day by day. It's 24 hours at a time, which is what, this podcast is really ultimately about, is trying to take 24 at a time and trusting God for that even so it's going to be okay.
Yes, even so.
Well, Anita, are there certain signs that maybe you, as one who suffers with depression, can you see it in another person? Or, I know that we hide it well. So, but are there obvious things that
there are some things.
Okay.
One of the first things that I think that you can notice in someone is that what they are used to enjoying, the things they usually find pleasure in, they all of a sudden have a loss of interest in that. And they just kind of retreat and isolate themselves, and they lose interest in life. They lose interest in even the things that they used to find enjoyable.
Wow, okay.
Another thing to look for is changes in eating patterns. Eating a lot more than what you usually eat, or eating a lot less than what you eat before. Sleep patterns is another big one.
Okay.
Insomnia, or staying in bed as much as possible.
Okay.
Sleep can become an escape hatch. And sometimes people, when they're dealing with depression, will just sleep as much as they possibly can, because sleep is an escape that gets you away from things. So those are some things off the top of my head.
Yes. Now, if we have someone that we have a feeling is depressed, or for you, what would you do if you recognize that someone is showing these signs in your own church or in your own family? What would be your first steps?
My first step would be to just sit down with them on a one-on-one talk and just tell them my own story, and then to let them know that it's okay. It's okay that if you're feeling depressed, it's an okay thing to feel this way. Yeah. Your feelings are valid. Yes. Now, what is causing those feelings may not be valid, but your feelings are valid, and you need to deal with those emotions. And I would talk to them, and I would offer them help in the means of making sure that I can give them a name of a counseling center. I think we should all know the name of a counseling center that you can refer people to. I think it's important that we have that.
Absolutely.
I have a business card size questions to ask people if they're suicidal.
Okay.
So that I know, based on what the answer to those questions, I can refer them either to a professional help or get in the car with them and take them to the hospital because they've answered this question in a certain way. And I would be more than willing to, if somebody wants to email me at Marie Wilson at aliasintown.com, I'll just mail you out one of those cards. But yes, I would straight up just talk about it. And one of the things I've learned in suicide prevention training is that you don't avoid talking about suicide with people that are suicidal. You actually address the suicide with them. And it's the same with depression. You don't avoid talking about depression. You address it head on.
Sure.
And for most people, if you give them that chance to release it from themselves, if they feel like they are in a non-judgmental atmosphere and they can just release all of that, you will end up being able to talk with them and hopefully give them some hope.
Sure. And I just want to, what'd you say?
And then pray with them.
Yes. Yeah. You know, getting counseling, or a more common word today is therapy, from someone who is good, who's qualified, who has the proper worldview, has, you know, a scriptural viewpoint. It's so helpful. And I don't know how anybody makes it through life without some type of counseling. You know, it's not a bad thing. It's not that you're a failure, because I have received, you know, many times of counseling and all. It's just, we do it for, you know, when our car's out of tune, we don't think it's a problem. You know, we're a failure for taking to the mechanic. And all. It's just, the life is too complicated to not need help. And if you need help, it's fine. It's just reach out and get some help. And your book,
talk to your medical doctor too.
Right.
There.
Sure.
If your issue is with brain chemistry problem, medications today are amazing and helping with
exactly.
That. I'm sorry I interrupted you.
No, you're good. Thank you for talking with me today. And your book would be a good start for people if they're struggling with depression, or if you know somebody that's struggling with your depression. You can say, "Hey, listen to this podcast. Check this podcast out for one thing." But here's her book. And again, it's Anita Wilson, and your book is called Well, a Memoir, and your website is aliasintown.com. And again, you can find out more about me at 24today.com or tomwhitesel.com. Anita, it's just been a real pleasure to talk to you today, and I hope that people will get your book, will contact you for speaking opportunities so that they can hear your story, to just get connected with you, because God has given you a way to help people through this.
So thankful for that.
Yeah.
So thankful for that.
So, Thank you again, Anita, and thank you for listening. If you like this particular podcast, if you would click like, if you would share it, that would be great. Subscribe to this channel. Comment below on the YouTube channel there. That helps a lot for others to be able to see that this is something that would be good for them. So thank you again for listening, and thank you, Anita, for being my guest. And just a reminder for all of you that there's still time left in this 24-hour period to really live life today.